So I have a hand from a 1-3 home game.
1-3 home game. Okay.
So we are 770 effective, and it starts off with the hijack opening to 8, which is the standard pre-flop raise in this game. So it's not really like a weak raise like it would be live normally.
Well, pretty small. Okay. So hijack opens to 8. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm in the cutoff with pocket queens, and I 3-bet to 26.
Okay.
And then the villain in the big blind cold 4-bets to 70. So the villain in this hand is pretty aggressive, and I've seen him 4-bet a lot with value and a lot of bluffs too. I don't know, the sizing felt like a little bit small to me. He has a background online, so I think he might be like kind of autopiloting with size there.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I think I have like a pretty standard call here. I don't really want to 5-bet, especially like this deep with him.
Yeah, you'd
So
have to make a huge deviation to consider this a fold. I mean, I've seen queen queen folded to cold 4 bets, but that's a huge deviation. I assume the hijack gets out of the way.
yeah, the hijack
Yeah.
gets out of the way. And I'm
Okay.
never folding to a 4-bet with
Right.
this guy, even with like nines. But
Okay. So
um,
right under 150. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, I think I call. Yep.
so the flop is 9-4-4 rainbow.
Okay.
The big blind bets 35, which I'm assuming he does with range, and I think I have a pretty straightforward call.
35. Wow. Okay.
35 into 150, so I guess it's like what 23%, which is kind of like standard for a 4-bet pot. I think it's like supposed to be bigger when you're deep, but this guy is an online player, so I
Well,
don't
I
think you.
remember I remember
Yeah,
looking at a couple of these spots recently in the last 2 or 3 months because we always talk about in these spots that you can't allow somebody to min bet you when you're out of position and then have them just realize their equity. So say like the positions were somehow flipped around and you checked and you bet 35, you're supposed to have some check raises, but you're also supposed to have some raises too in position. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head with the theory with specifically in 4-bet pots in this particular configuration, but I can almost guarantee you're supposed to have some raises here. And I would think that the lower the pair, the more apt you might have some raises. Let me ask you this question. If this guy checked, what would you have done?
if he checked, I would probably bet. I might like check behind some aces that I slow play as a trap, but I
Uh-huh.
think queens want some protection here.
So did you ever consider raising this bet?
Um, I considered it, but I think that villain's pretty balanced when it comes to betting here, and I don't think raising accomplishes that much because Ace King. I mean, it does make Ace King with a backdoor indifferent, but I'm just not really looking to pile money in, especially with a big blind cold 4-bet, which is really strong.
Okay. It's an interesting thing to look at. Like I said, even when you're playing in games where no one's even approaching optimal, you learn about the game when you look at these particular spots. What is done in a certain situation. But okay, so you call, and the pot's like 220, right?
Yeah. Oh, I just want to point out the villain in this hand does try to play as close to optimal as he can.
In a 1-3 home game.
He's never stepped foot in a casino before, but he's like a 6 big blind winner at 200 NL. He used to play that as his job, so he knows what he's doing. I don't know how good he is at deep stack poker. He's really good at 100 big blinds, just because
Okay.
that's what he's used to. But yeah,
Right, and you guys are actually using the kind of online sizing. I always talk about like you look at 1-3 770 effective, but in a live game when people are opening to like 15, right, and then the 3 bets to like 50, and then the cold 4-bet goes to like 150. It's a lot shallower than what it looks like on paper, but you guys are actually using kind of small sizing, so
right.
you actually are this deep. So you make the call. The pot's 220. Okay.
Okay, so the turn is another 9,
Okay.
and big blind continues betting for 175, starting to polarize.
Are the suits irrelevant here, or was there a
Yeah,
backdoor?
it's rainbow.
Okay, so we'll just put 9 rainbow. And he bets 175.
Yeah, and I think once again I have a straightforward call. I don't think I can really raise here at this point
No,
when
I
it
don't think
takes like this 80% sizing.
I don't think you can raise unless you were much, much shallower, because when you call, the pot is what going to be 570, and you guys have like 500 left, right? Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get into a situation where you're you only have less than, say, like a half pot size bet, then you get to talk about like protection raising, right? In
Right, I
certain
think I'd get it in
situations.
here with
Yeah.
like less than 500 effective.
Yeah, this is interesting that he continues to fire around a nine. I mean, listen, like a nine shouldn't really be all that represented in a four bet pot, like in terms from you, right? I mean, I don't know what you're doing with like 10-9 suited here or ace nine suited, but it shouldn't be all that. He did use just under 3x sizing with a cold four bet. What's funny is if you think that he's like an online background and structuring like some of these cold four bets where it's not always super strong hands, you probably should have some nine, some of the best nines to defend with.
I absolutely have 10-9 suited and pocket nines here, 9-8 suited,
Right, right.
because he's four betting wide.
So you do have some nines, so it's interesting that he's continuing to bet. Who knows what he knows,
I
right?
mean, like, I do have the nut advantage here, but in terms of combinations, there's one combo, pocket nines, and I'm probably defending partials of 10-9 suited, so I don't think it really stops him from betting, just because it's not that represented in my range.
Okay, that's certainly true. So the pot's 570 to the river.
Yeah, so the river is offsuit four, so make a full house if that really matters.
By the way, too, what you just to piggyback on what you were saying that you have the nut advantage, but he has sort of more of a equity advantage, range advantage. But that is actually supposed to be represented by from him with a smaller sizing, with a theory though, as opposed to going 175 as I understand it. That's just a little bit of a note. But now the board is 9-4-4-9-4, so there's obviously a full house on board, right? But overpairs play, right?
Right. And also he could have ace four suited here, so I don't really know if I have a nut advantage, I guess, because I do have more combos of
Well,
nines and suited nines.
right on the turn though, right? A nine
Yeah.
beats a four on the turn. Yeah. Okay. So river's an offsuit four. Yep.
And then the big blind goes, well, he tanks for like probably 5 minutes, and then he goes all in for 500.
So big blind all in, 500. I mean, from your backstory here of this guy trying to play, somewhat optimally, he's got a history of online. It seems like kind of an MDF call down linearly type of call where, you might fold out like tens and jacks and, call with whatever is not four bet. It seems like you're pretty high up in your range for not. Then again, you might not have a five bet range in position too. I don't know if
That's
you do.
the thing, I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah. So if you have aces here, kings, queens, jacks, and tens, again, when we talk about MDF, the guy is basically, he's risking just under pot, but if he was risking pot, then the hero would have to basically call with half the hands that he gets here with, right?
Right.
In order to make this call. But I feel like you have some ace highs here that are getting to the end too, right? Like
Yeah, but I don't know if he takes this line with like an ace king type hand, because
no, I'm saying you have some ace highs that you get to the river
right.
with here. So queens very well might fall into that top 50%. You see what I'm saying?
I think I'd fold out ace king on the turn, especially because there's no backdoor, right? I mean, I don't think I can call on turn when he's probably going to shove river with most hands.
Yeah, but I mean, ace king would seem like the best ace high to call. Well, one of the best ace highs to call with, right? Just because of overcards to like queens and jacks. I mean, if you're folding ace king, you're folding all the ace highs on the turn. It's possible. I mean, my gut would be if this guy's trying to play optimally, that seems to. I would think queen is in there, and I'd probably throw in the call and maybe fold out like jacks and tens. It's very close.
Yeah, what I was thinking was that it kind of comes down to pre-flop and his hand selection in terms of cold four betting, because he seems to have a lot of bluffs cold four betting, and I've seen him cold four bet like ace queen off like it, I think, full frequency. So when I have queens, I block ace queen off.
Right.
And so I think a better call down hand here would probably be jacks, but
Oh,
I don't know.
just because of the blocking properties, you mean?
Yeah, and he's not really supposed to take this line with ace king all the time, because I'm calling flop with ace king, obviously, and he should have some give ups there on the turn. But I think I've seen him kind of get like a little bit too out of line, doing stuff he should be doing maybe half the time, like at full frequency. So I decided to call.
And by the way, I will fully admit what the caller just said. it's also stuff that I'm learning it's not something that I consider all that much in the games that I play, like in a spot like this, in certain combinations of hands blocking what would be optimal continues for bluffs. It's pretty high level stuff that you wouldn't usually run into in a 1-3 home game. And most of the games that I play, the very profitable live games, you don't have to worry about that stuff. But it sounds like hero calls, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do call.
Okay.
And the villain has Ace King, and he like pretty much called me an idiot for calling there because I snap called because I was deciding what to do while he was in his eternal tank, and he like wanted to make a bet with me on what Pio would say. And he's like, "I'll give you 2-1." That it says to fold there at least 70% of the time.
I mean, I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I mean, just looking on paper, I would imagine that it seems like Ace King is okay for to barrel off here for the reasons that if you don't have a five bet range, right, he's blocking your primary like really strong hands, right, with aces and kings.
Yeah, I think that he should have Ace King here, but I don't think he should have Ace King here all the time because, like I said, he can win a showdown with Ace King because I'm calling with my ace highs on the flop. He can also, I guess, like you said, that I can call some Ace King on the turn, so he can give up river, go check check, and we chop.
Yeah, it's
So
surprising that he always that he's trying to run that too because he does have a sliver of showdown value. Although once you call the turn, unless you have some hands that are like eights and below, right? Because you chop to eights and below too, right?
right.
Yeah, so unless you have some hands that are eights and below, he gets you off of the ace high chops.
I mean, I probably defend pocket sixes and sevens here for board coverage reasons. But yeah, I guess that if there was a backdoor, then he would probably have a better case for giving up because I can call with like an ace king, ace queen suited on the turn.
I wonder too if ace king is ever depending on how many counterfeit pairs you have, is ace king ever possibly better to check call if you're not betting like jacks or queens here at the end? It's just something to think about.
I don't think ace king could ever call river if I bet.
Yeah, I mean, it would be calling for some chop. I just wonder what you're betting here at the end if check two.
Probably aces and kings. That's it.
So if he has ace king and you're betting aces and kings, that's it. Then are you finding the bluffs with eights, sevens, and sixes? Because I'd assume eights, sevens, and sixes are taken for a bluff here, or are they just checked back to just try to? Yeah,
Oh, no.
I mean they chop with ace high too. So
I mean, I think eight, sevens, and sixes definitely have to be bluffed because it's like the worst thing you get to the river
yeah, but
with.
don't you chop against ace high though?
You do sometimes, but he also is checking like queens, jacks, tens at the end. So I think that it's probably more profitable to bluff. I guess that he will have some traps with like aces or whatever,
Well,
but
I appreciate the call, Will. Thank you very much. It's
yeah.
it's it's fun sometimes to go down in theory. My head hurts a little bit though. But that's not your fault. Thanks a lot, Will.